So friends, we're in for a long and ranty video, so I hope you got a drink, I hope you're comfortable, maybe a snack. Let's get started. Hello friends, I'm Rosa, welcome to the channel. Today we are talking about all my favorite books that I've read so far this year. I think I touched a little bit on this in the mid-year freakout tag video that I did. I'll link that in the corner. But I thought I would go into a little bit more books than just the two that I mentioned in that video, so that's what we're doing today. I have a lot of books to talk about because I can't make up my mind. So I think I chose like 13 or 12 of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. Could have chosen more. Tried to control myself. So it's probably gonna be a longer video. I hope you're ready. First though, that's much better. It's way too warm in my office right now, so ponytail time it is. Anyway, I know that we're kind of like past the midpoint of the year, so December wrap-ups are closer, but I still thought it would be funny to do this kind of video now. A lot can happen in the next 4 months. I'll probably read some more books that I want to add to this list, but I still wanted to do a video now on it because I love talking about my favorite books. So enough intro, let's get started with the first one, which is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and this is by V.E. Schwab. So in this book we follow Addie LaRue, who is a girl from France. She was born in the, oh gosh, I don't even remember, a long time ago, 1714. She is running for her life. That's how the book starts. Anyway, not a spoiler, but she's unhappy with her life in early 1700s in France, and I think she's also going to be married off to someone, as far as I remember. So she runs off because she's not into that, she's not interested. She runs off in the middle of the night, ends up in the forest. She's been taught to contact the gods, but only do it during the day, because the gods that you contact at night may have ulterior motives to helping you. But for her, it's kind of like she's desperate, so she contacts the god and makes a deal with them. Or him. Makes a deal with him. It's a he. Is it though? Could it be both? I don't know. Could it be a they? But she makes a deal with said god, and basically the deal is like Addie can live forever, but she will never be remembered by anyone. If she enters the room and you see her, you'll remember her face in the moment, but as soon as she leaves the room, you'll forget her. So she's living with this and having a hard time getting by, living life. She's living as a thief and stuff. And 300 years in New York, she walks into a bookstore and finds a guy who actually does recognize her, who remembers her. And that is what this book is about, at least on the surface level. I don't think I talked about this book in my wrap-ups last year because I didn't finish it until like the very start of January, like the 2nd of January or something like that, so I never got to really talk about it as far as I remember. And if I did, I'm happy talking about it again because I loved it so much. It was just so beautiful. I felt like it was very, what is the word that I'm looking for? Like it has a message in a way to live your life and put your mark on the world. I think it's also a story that's been very personal to V.E. Schwab as a writer. She's kind of setting her mark on the world as well by having her books and her stories read by people, so she'll be remembered. The thing about Addie is that she'll always be a muse, but she can never actually write anything on her own because it just disappears. So she can be the inspiration to people, but she can never actually create something on her own. And I think this whole message of, is this really what you want, living forever, but you can never make an impact in the world in any way? Is that really what you want? So at least that's what I got from this book. I thought it was beautiful. I gave it a full-on 5 stars. I enjoyed it so much, but I also really enjoy V.E. Schwab's writing. I think it's beautiful. I only read her Darker Shades of Magic before this, and now I've also read Gallant, which we're not going to talk about today, but her writing just really, I vibe with it. I really enjoy it, and it was nice to see it in a story like this as well, because Darker Shades of Magic is definitely something else. So I thought it was beautiful. I would definitely reread this at some point, because I can imagine like rewatching a movie and you suddenly notice something new. I can imagine that happening with this book if I reread it. So I just thought it was really beautiful and full on 5 stars. Highly recommend it. It is adult fantasy, but also historical fiction. It's more, I would say, urban fantasy because it is set in a city. It's New York City, our world, and magic or magical realism. I don't know, magic. Definitely magic. So that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Beautiful book. Also, actually beautiful edition. This is the anniversary edition. Everyone's decided to make noise in the apartment like right now. I started recording this video. I'm just sitting here like, are you quiet now? Moving on to the next one. Another beautiful book. And that is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is so cliche, like so far. None of the books that I'm talking about today are probably gonna surprise you in any way. But I read this, I think around May. Did I give it a full-on 5 stars? I don't remember. But it's young adult fantasy. We have to do with gods. There's a little bit of magic in there, or a little bit more than a little bit. We follow Laszlo, who is a librarian, and he has a passion for this specific city that is called Weep. Weep isn't actually the city's name, but nobody remembers what Weep's actual name is, so it's known as Weep. So he's read up on stories about Weep, wondering what happened to its name. How could everyone just forget its name? He's even learned the language that they speak in Weep, so he's just very passionate about Weep. I feel like that might have been part of the reason that he ended up in the library, but it could also be because he is actually an orphan. And I think maybe, I don't exactly remember right now, so that's why I'm theorizing. Very interesting. But he might also have been taken in by the people who run the library, but anyway. Definitely a librarian. We also follow, what is her name? She's red-haired and blue. Sarai. So the beauty of having tabbed your books, you can easily find information if you're looking for it. But we also follow Sarai and her siblings. I can't really say much about them without spoiling anything, so I'm just not going to, but there is a dual point of view in this. There's Laszlo and then there's Sarai. Anyway, but Laszlo at some point in the book actually gets the chance to go to Weep, and of course he jumps on it. He's been dreaming of like bigger things his entire life, and he finally gets to go somewhere and experience some stuff, and it's in Weep. Like, that is amazing. So that is pretty much what I'm gonna say about the story. At least the writing is beautiful, lyrical. It's like a song. Yeah, I feel like that's the best way I can describe it. It's vibes, it's beauty, it's magical. It won't vibe with everyone. If you are a fast-paced kind of person, think Adrienne Young or Trisha Levenseller, this might not be your thing. But if you like V. Schwab's writing, I feel like you could resonate with this kind of with Laini Taylor's kind of writing. It's just very flowy and vibes. There's not a whole lot to the story. It's very much building up a picture, if you will, and I was here for the whole thing. I thought it was gorgeous. I was just sucked into it. I'll also think Night Circus, because it does have the same kind of like build up. Like, we're talking vibes and atmosphere and just pictures. Yeah, I feel like that's the best way I can explain it. It was just beautiful. I really loved it, and I have started on Muse of Nightmares, but it wasn't on my TBR for the month, so I stopped reading it, and now I'm just kind of, when do I continue reading it? Because I really need to. I need to know what happens with these people. I want to get into that world again. Just beautiful. Strange the Dreamer, though, would highly recommend. Just not if you want like super fast paced. It's not for you, but if you are okay with like, if Night Circus is one of your favorite books, you might really like Strange the Dreamer. So yeah, not because story-wise they're the same. It's just like the writing, the way that it's built up. That sort of thing, yeah. Next up, I think we should talk about an adult contemporary romance, and that is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Actually really excited because my Lumicrate box is currently on its way here, and I gave this a 5 stars, I should probably say first. I am also receiving a special edition of The Love Hypothesis in that box, so I'm just so excited, along with Love on the Brain, which I'm super excited for too. But we have some adult contemporary romance. I do love myself a good contemporary romance, a good rom-com. This one is about Olive, who is very focused on her studies, and she has a friend who has kind of started dating someone, or at least is interested in someone Olive has been seeing in the past. So she feels kind of bad about it and wants to make sure that Olive is actually moving on to someone else, while Olive just wants to focus on her science studies. That's basically what Olive's life is, and she's okay with that. So one day, to get her friend off of her back and just be like, listen, I'm good, everything is fine, she tells her that she's on a date, but she's actually just at the school However, her friend happens to be at the school as well. So Olive panics and basically decides to kiss the first guy that she sees, who is Adam, a professor at the school. Adam is known as being like the grumpy, mean teacher at this, or professor at the school. So it's a bit like, why him, Olive? What's happening? They start a fake dating relationship. There's a whole thing. And it's so much fun. Love the fake dating, love the grumpy sunshine, although I wouldn't say Olive is necessarily super sunshiny, but Adam is definitely grumpy as heck. And yeah, it's just fun to follow. This basically took the internet or booktube and book talk by storm, so I'd be surprised if you hadn't heard about it by now. I am basic when it comes to some of my book opinions. I loved this. I thought it was amazing. I gave it 5 stars for a rom-com. I thought it was perfect. It's self-aware. It's funny. It's not taking itself seriously. It has charming characters. It has tropes that aren't like in your face, except for maybe the fake dating. That's a little bit in your face, but the rest. It has a non-freckled ginger. Appreciate that. Thank you. We don't all have freckles. That didn't add to the rating. I just felt like I had to point that out. But anyway. And it had relationships. It had drama. It was just really, really good. Nicely paced. Well written, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. And if you're looking for just like a fun time with a rom-com, I would highly recommend reading this at some point because it's just a good time. Gotta move them over here because I know that she can't stand on her own. So, you good? Okay. She's good. So I can't show every single book in this next series, but we're gonna talk a little bit about Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas because I finally read it this year, and some of the books in that series have definitely for me, deserve a spot on this list. Among them is Kingdom of Ash. I would also say Empire of Storms, among my favorites. I can't believe that back in 2016 I read the first 4 and then received Empire of Storms, and then I just didn't read it. I just had it lying around for 6 years before I finally read it. 5.5 years. What's the difference at that point? Like, who does that? Who does that to themselves? On the other hand, I'm happy that I didn't read Empire of Storms back in 2016. If you read it, you would know why. But this series as a whole is just amazing in so many different ways. I won't say that it's perfect as a series because it's definitely not. It does have a debut book in it that is not written in like the most beautiful way. Throne of Glass is not necessarily like Sarah J. Maas's writing definitely improved throughout Throne of Glass, I will say that, but her writing now is, I vibe with it so much, I resonate with it so much, so her books really just hit a spot for me. Wasn't this out in 2020? Or was it 2019? Oh, 2018. I would have had to wait 2 years? Yeah, I'm so happy I didn't read Empire Storms. I just thought about that for a second. I was like so happy. Anyway, but this is young adult, at least for the first 4. Sarah J. Maas. Just know where you're walking into. Empire Storms, not super YA. Yeah, a little bit not YA at times. I don't know how else to put it. And throughout the series, you are experiencing magic. There's assassins, pirates, not full-on dragons, but wyverns, witches, elves, or fae. I should call them fae. Sometimes I want to call them elves. What else is there? Royals, balls, intrigue, schemes, plans, surprises, backstabbery. It just has a little bit of everything, to be honest. Healers. There's also healers. I feel like, am I missing something? I'm like looking at the books and trying to go through everything so I can like replay it in my head and see if it has a little bit of everything. Yes. We follow Selena Sardothian, who is the world's best, greatest assassin. She's also 17, so she got that title very quickly in her life. But in Throne of Glass, the first book, we meet her as she is being released, or at least let out, not fully released, of the salt mines where she's been basically working as a slave for a while. And she's being led away from the salt mines by the crown prince, whose name is Dorian, and his bodyguard, whose name is, or it's not a bodyguard, but like the leader of the guard, or whatever his title is, whose name is Kale. So she's taken back to the palace where the royals live because there's going to be a tournament, and the winner of this tournament is going to be the king's assassin. So the book is about her going through this tournament. And that is like the smallest part in this series. I don't know how to emphasize that enough. Like, Throne of Glass, the first book, does not come, like, I can't tell you what the other books are about because I don't want to spoil anything, but I said there was magic in it, right? Does that plot sound like it has magic? Okay? There's much more to it than that. I just don't know how to, there's so much more to it than that. I just always find it funny when you have to talk or like when you have to summarize Throne of Glass and then summarize the first book. It's not really gonna help with anything because I'm not selling it to you with that summary. That doesn't sound very, here's a tournament. Like, cool, sure, but it really gives nothing away for the rest of the series. And honestly, I'm just gonna leave it at that. But I feel like everyone knows Throne of Glass by now. If you don't though, super cool, you should definitely look into it. I do have a friend on my Discord server who just got into reading, so she doesn't know anything, and I'm excited for her to experience Throne of Glass. It's gonna be fun at some point. So anyway, highly recommend. I'm talking like happy times, sad times, tears at times. It's just a whole lot, but it's also 8 books. There's a lot to go through, so take your time. We have another contemporary romance, and that is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. It's the longest title I have in my collection, I think. And this is by Benjamin Alira Science. This book takes place in, I think it's the 80s or the 90s. I think it's the 80s though. We follow 2 guys who become friends, they grow up together, and you basically see their relationship evolve throughout the years. You follow them as their kids growing into young adults. So it's a bit of a coming of age story, but there's also a coming out story. It is a romance after all. And it's about them getting to know each other, getting to know themselves, finding their place in the world, and it's really, really beautiful. So I read this during a readathon. I basically breezed through it. You could easily read this in one sitting. There's not a whole lot of words on every page, and some of them are like really, really short. Some of them, they basically have like a very like back and forth kind of chemistry, like quick back and forth, which is a lot of fun to read. It's very charming. So if you're just as well looking for a nice, pleasant, but also at times a little bit heavy young adult contemporary romance that's just a quick read, this is beautiful. So I had a good time with it. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars, and I still haven't read the sequel. That's a thing. Oops. Next up, we have another one that I don't think anyone's going to be surprised about being on this list, and that is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I read these, by these I mean the first 3. I read them back in March or something, I think. I'd been kind of like holding off on reading them for a rainy day, as I call it. So when I feel like I haven't read good books for just a little bit, I'll pick up something that I know I'll love. And I knew that I was going into this knowing that I would love it. Did not know that I would love it that much, but I kind of had a feeling. So these are, I think some people would classify them as new adult, but let's just say adult. Very much fantasy romance. Just want to emphasize fantasy romance. Do not expect a high fantasy plot from this. There's also magic and creatures, and by creatures, like paranormal creatures. Yes. I don't really know how much I can say. I don't want to spoil anything. Oh, there's like, in the first one, there's some creature that kind of reminds me of zombies. That's a thing, I'm pretty sure. It's not a zombie book though, just wanna point that out. Not a zombie book, but I feel like there's a creature in the first one that kind of reminds me of a zombie. It's at least like a version of a zombie. Anyway, but in these books we follow Poppy, who is what they call a maiden. So being a maiden means that she can't make friends. She basically cannot talk to anyone other than this person who helps her, who I feel like I would call a maid, but then you're just gonna get confused. So I'm just gonna say a helper. Yes. I'm sure she has another title, but I don't remember. She can talk to her, and she can talk to are they royals? the leaders who like live in this palace. She can talk to them as well, but it's very limited who she can talk to, and she definitely cannot make friends. She also has to wear a veil at all times to hide her face. She's not allowed to experience pleasure. She cannot, there's a lot of things she can't do. She's very limited in what she can do. She has like a set, you need to learn this per day, you need to read this, blah 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 blah. There's a lot. It's like her day's basically just like, this is what you gotta do. And Poppy didn't really choose this role for her. It's supposed to be an honor, but it's not really what she wants, so she has a tendency to sneak out of the palace. And one day, she ends up meeting a guy at a tavern whose name is Hawk. And Hawk kind of makes an impression on her. And Poppy starts to think, maybe this life really is not for me. And what else can I say? I don't think I want to say anything else. I think that's what I want to say. I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Yeah. But there's a lot more to it than that. It's all about you experiencing this while reading it instead of hearing it from me. Twists and turns, guys. Twists and turns. So it was, this is everything I want in a fantasy romance. I love the tension, love the twists and the turns, love the backstabbery, love the front stabbery. There's a little bit of that going on too. A little bit smutty at times as well, so if you're into that, if you're not, then avoid it. But again, I just want to clarify just one more time that this is definitely a fantasy romance. I have heard from others who went into it thinking that it was going to be something else, because you don't really want to compare it to Sarah J. Maas, for example, where there's romance, but it's not the entire plot. Whereas this is very much fantasy romance. There is a plot other than that, but the romance definitely takes priority. So I just don't expect like a high fantasy plot, because that's not what it is, and you're not gonna get it from Blood and Ash. But if you want a smutty time and tension and vibes and enemies to lovers, this got you covered. This very much has you covered. I think I gave it a 5 stars for a fantasy romance, because it did what it had to do, and I loved it. We have more books to talk about actually. Some of them I don't have as physical copies. So we have 7 more books to talk about, which is, I'm going through this way too slowly. I like to talk about my favorite books, but I want to talk about one that I don't have as a physical copy, and that is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, which is a graphic novel. It's young adult, contemporary romance, and we follow Nick and Charlie. I had to think about their names for a second. There's a lot of lead character names going on today. Okay. We follow Nick and Charlie, who are basically, I wouldn't say full-on opposites, but Charlie is a music nerd, if you will, and Nick is the school jock. He's a bit of a popular kind of guy. So Charlie has unwillingly come out to the entire school as gay, and we follow him kind of being picked at a little bit because of that. It's like people are douches basically. One day at school he ends up sitting next to Nick, who is just a very nice guy. And the two of them actually end up getting along very well. They start becoming friends, and then, you know, things evolve a little bit from that. So we have another story that's both a bit like finding your place in the world, dealing with issues such as EDs as well, so just be aware of that. But also there's a bit of a coming out story in these books as well, and they're just charming and fun and light, but touches on heavy subjects, but does it in like a breezy kind of way. I don't know how else to say it. It does it very, very well. And it's just overall just fluffy and cute. Fluffy, actually that means something else. It's just cute. It's like a dog. I don't Heartstopper is like a cute dog. You just want to hug it and you'll love it right away, and it's like a dog, okay? It's like a puppy. And Nick too is actually a golden retriever, so that's fitting. Yeah. Highly recommend if you find yourself in a reading slump and you are into young adult contemporary, definitely consider looking up on Heartstopper, because I feel like it would definitely help with a reading slump. And I'm pretty sure I gave the first one a full 5 stars. I don't remember about the other ones, but I think I read up until the 4th. I read everything she has on her website. If I remember, I'll link it down below in the description box, but she updates it now and then, so I think I've read... Actually, I might have a few new posts. I need to go check that afterwards. Yeah. And then the other book that I wanted to talk about that I don't have as a physical copy is From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. So this is an adult contemporary romance. Mariana Zapata is like the queen of slow burns. I have read about four of her books so far, and she definitely does the slow burn and Grumpy and Sunshine so well. This one is not really Grumpy Sunshine, it's definitely a slow burn though, and we are dealing with like a workplace romance, but also an enemies to lovers romance, a rivals romance, kind of. We basically follow, I forgot their names, or I forgot her name at least, but we follow our lead girl who is an ice skater. She's been unfortunate with her partners. Her last partner left her for someone else. So her ice skating partner. And now she's just kind of ice skating on her own. However, she is meant to do pairs, not solo. She's definitely meant to do pairs, but that means she's having a little bit of a hard time kind of finding her spot in the ice skating world now because she's just on her own. And she's also starting to wonder if maybe she's because she's a lot older than a lot of the other girls that are at this place. So she's starting to wonder if maybe her time has passed and it's time to move on to something else. At this place though as well, and I believe his family partially owns the place as well. I don't really remember exactly how it is, but there's a guy called Ivan Lukov who our lead girl just hates. They have some history. They like to call each other things. They're not very nice to each other. It's a lot of fun to read. I just want to say that. Like, they swear at each other all the time. It's much fun. And Ivan one day makes the proposal, and our lead girl cannot resist this proposal. So that is, he basically has like, let's make a deal. Yeah. And that's all I'm gonna say. But it's a deal that our lead girl has a hard time resisting. So yeah. But this book is a lot of fun. The thing about Mariana Zapata's slow burns is that like it's like paced very realistically. So you really get to know the characters and see them getting to know each other. Or if they already know each other, you get to see their already relationship evolve into something a little bit better. And it's just very charming. I love the way she writes. It's so good. If you want a slow burn, just look into her books. I can highly recommend. You will not be disappointed. But I'm pretty sure if I didn't give From Lukov with Love 5 stars, I gave it something close to 5 stars. I'm pretty sure. It was really good. So would highly recommend. Again, an adult contemporary, but not like The Love Hypothesis, which is a rom-com. This is a little bit more, I don't want to call it serious because it's still funny, but it's not a rom-com. Yeah. And now we got 5 books left. So next up, I want to talk about The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, which is an adult fantasy, almost high fantasy. There's romance in it and magic. So in this book, we follow a princess who has been sent to a temple by her brother to basically be imprisoned there because she doesn't want to burn herself. Sounds very dramatic. It is. Her brother sucks. I still want to punch him in the face. Like, he just sucks. He sucks so much. I'm so angry with him. He sucks. He's awful. Yeah, he's a bad man. This temple that she's at is a little bit special though. We have a lot of maidservants walking around there, but something has happened in the past that is still kind of tied to some characters. And one day she finds one of the maidservants in a bit of a situation and figures out something about her that she's not supposed to know because our maidservant has a secret. Our maidservant also has a family that she's trying to save at the same time. I can safely say that is in the synopsis, but other than that I don't think I can say much other than this is beautiful. I loved it. I loved the build-up. I loved the explanations. I loved the addition of like very not-in-your-face religion. It felt very nice. The magic was interesting as well. I thought it was very original, the way that they get the magic, if you will. And I loved seeing their relationship slowly bloom as well. It was very beautiful. I loved it so much. It was flowy and nice and just beautiful. And the Oleander Sword is coming out soon as well, so I'm looking forward to it so much. This was almost a 5-star for me. Not entirely, like not quite there, but very close. Also, if you want like a feminist book, this is most definitely it. Very feminist, which I thought was so cool because a lot of the guys in this book just they don't know what they're doing, and then they just burn women. Like why? You know why? Why would you burn women? Anyway, so definitely a, well, if you can't do it, then I'm gonna do it book from a woman's perspective. It was beautiful. Highly recommend. Another book that I've been talking about a couple of times on the channel is Defy the Night by Bridget Kemmerer, which is a young adult fantasy with royals and rebels and magic. Isn't there magic? And now that I think about it, there might not be a whole lot of magic in it. Maybe there's not magic. It's a Robin Hood retelling though. Is there really not magic in it? Maybe I just felt like there was magic in it because it was magical. Could that be why? That could be why. I had such a good time reading this book. I read it with my patrons. By the way, if you want to check out the Patreon, there's a link to it in the description box. And I breezed through it. I had such a good time trying to guess everything because it's really, some of it, sure, you can kind of foresee it, but some of it I didn't feel like I could. And the whole like royals and rebels, but who's on whose side, super cool. So we follow, now I gotta watch out what I'm saying because I don't want to spoil anything, but we follow, you know, some books you really have to like watch out. This is one of those. We follow two people, a guy and a girl who are rebels. They basically steal this flower that is used to make an antidote to the sickness that is spreading throughout the kingdom. So it can't really fully cure it, but it can at least hold it at bay. So they keep stealing this flower that is used to do this from these different places. What they're doing is not exactly legal, by the way. There's a reason they're rebels, but that's what they do. There are rumors spreading in this kingdom, though, that this cure might not actually fully work anymore, and one day something happens. Our lead girl, Tessa, I think her name is Tessa. Her name is Tessa, okay. She experiences something, sees something, and basically takes off to the palace where the royals are to infiltrate it, finds herself infiltrating it, and what she sees is so messed up that she starts to doubt if this kingdom can actually be saved. I think that's all I'm gonna say. I don't think I can say much more than that. The only thing I had in this one was that our lead girl cried a bit much, like just a little bit too much for my liking. But other than that, the book was so good. Like, so fast-paced, well-written. The story was great. Love the Robin Hood retelling because I honestly don't see that a lot. So it was very, very nice to see. And I will ride or die this book. Everyone should read it if you love young adult fantasy. This was great. There is a romance plot in it as well. I think I forgot to say that, but there is romance in it. And there's a sequel coming out very soon, which is called Defend the Dawn. I always have to check because I can't. I always want to call it Defy the Dawn. I don't know what that's about. It's become a thing. Ride or die though. Yes. I'm so excited for the sequel. It's ridiculous. 3 more books. I'm really excited to talk about the last one. So next up we have Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, which is a young adult sci-fi. In this we follow Spencer, who, as a kid, her father was basically like her role model. Her father was a pilot. They live in a world, on a planet that they've kind of, like, this is in the future. So the humans have had to, I almost called it invade another planet, which technically it is, but let's just go with that, it's fine. They've had to go to this planet where, unfortunately, there's a hole in the sky where aliens are coming down to attack the people. So to defend the people, the humans, they have pilots that fight back. And her father used to be one of those pilots. However, something happens, and Spencer and her family see themselves disgraced after this thing happened. Fast forward, Spencer is a teenager, she's about 17, 16, and her biggest dream is to become a pilot. So she tries to get into pilot school, but they're not letting her in. One thing leads to another. That's all I can say, really. But Spencer is a very headstrong kind of girl. Like, if she wants something, she's gonna work to get it. And if she wants to fly, she's gonna fly. So I love Spencer so much. I love Spencer so much. This was also very well written in the way that, because we are in a whole new world with a whole new system that's built up. It's not anything like what we know from our world, so you can't just draw parallels like that. You have to build it up from the ground, and it was done so nicely without being info dumpy. You learn a lot about the spaceships that they're flying in as well without it being info dumpy. There's also a couple of drawings that I don't think I can find just quickly, but there's a couple of drawings of the different spaceships that they talk about, and both their own but also what the aliens are called Krell. the ones that they fly as well. So if you're confused about anything that they're explaining, you can go back to those drawings and like look, if you will, just have a quick look. But I just loved this so much. This was so great. Very charming characters. Loved seeing Spensa and all the different characters kind of developing relationships. There's a particular character who's not really a character, but don't know what to call it though. If you read the book, you know what I'm talking about, I think. That I adored. Like, that was a great addition. I love that. So I'm really looking forward to reading the sequels in this series. I own them. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Because this was like, for me, as someone who's not really used to reading sci-fi, this was a great sort of way to ease into it, and it was just great. Can you even see the Jasmine Throne? Rude. I'm so rude. I'm so sorry, book. Okay, anyway. Definitely recommend Skyward if you're looking for young adult sci-fi. It was just great. Beautiful. Or maybe beautiful is not the word I would use for that, but action-packed, nicely paced. I loved it. So we got 2 more books to talk about. No one's gonna be surprised by this one, but I've said that a couple of times in this video, haven't I? But the second last book that we're talking about is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. Yes, there are 2 Sarah J. Maas books on this list. That's just how it is today. This is the sequel to House of Earth and Blood. It is the second book in the Crescent City series, and it's adult urban fantasy, magic, fate. Think like every creature that you come across in other books, maybe except some of the ones in The Witcher. They're in this book. Yes, they're in this book. I had to think about that for a second. I was like, is this creature in this book? I won't say what it is, but it is. It is actually in this book. There's a lot. Like, there's a lot. They've basically taken every creature from other books and put them in this city that's called Crescent City. So the first book, I would say the second book also definitely has like a vibe, a mystery vibe, but the first one actually does have a bit of a murder mystery vibe to it. So we follow Bryce Quinlan, who is a demi-fae. She's half fae, and she lives in Crescent City where she's partying a lot with her friends. She's about 23 or 24 when the book starts. Her life is basically about partying, or she's 21 maybe. It doesn't matter. She's in her 20s. Her life is basically about partying with her friends, going out, getting drunk, having fun with dudes in toilet stalls, and you know, that sort of life. But there's a lot more to Bryce than just that. She also loves to dance, and I just want to emphasize that she's an awesome character. I love Bryce as a character. So anyway, she has a lot of good friends. Some of them are werewolves, and one day after she's been out with some other friends, she kind of shares an apartment, or at least like they hang out at her apartment. So she goes home, something has happened. The man who's accused of doing this, who the police thinks has done this, is found pretty quickly and thrown in jail. However, a year later, the murders start to happen again, and Bryce finds herself in the middle of an investigation that she has to help with because they don't really know who else to turn to. And while investigating this case, she has to work with this dude actually, whose name is Hunt. The two of them don't necessarily get along very well, but it's a lot of fun to read about. And I actually really enjoyed the murder mystery aspect to it. I wouldn't necessarily call it a full-on like mystery book, but it has the vibe that I just really liked. There's a lot of like, what's going on here questions throughout this book. And you can try to guess your way through a lot of it as well if you want to, if that's your thing. So I just really enjoyed it. I thought after reading both Throne of Glass but also Ekotar, it was nice to see Sarah J. Maas do something maybe a little bit different with the murder investigation going on. But also the fact that it's a little bit more of an urban vibe. I thought that was very great. And the reason that this one is on my list, first of all, like I said earlier, I resonate with Sarah J. Maas's writing so much. I love it. It just vibes with me. Not so much her writing in Throne of Glass, the first book, but in the rest. It just vibes with me. So I really want to say something about this book, and if you've read it, you know why, you know what it is, but I can't tell you. But there's a whole thing. That is so big. I don't think I can say anything without spoiling anything, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. There's a reason though that this book is amazing. Yes. That sounded so dumb, as if there's not a reason that other books are amazing. I just really feel like if you have read House of Earth and Blood and you've been putting this off, stop putting it off. Read it, because you're gonna be like, what? At some point. just gonna be like, what? Because that's how I was at some point while reading that. I was just like, I think I was screaming at like 3 a.m. in my living room. That pretty much sums it up. I was like, no way. So it was a good time. Highly recommend. Don't read these books as your first Sarah J Maas though. I would recommend getting started with Throne of Glass and then working your way through ACOTAR and then starting on Crescent City, just because that's, yeah, read in the order that she's released the books in. Except maybe finish Throne of Glass before you get started with ACOTAR. So the last book, I think there's a concert going on outside. So if you can hear anything in the background, I can't do anything about it. Anyway, the last book that I want to talk about is one that I read very recently, and having this edition of it now means so much more to me than it did before. It is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. I finished this last week and I loved it so much. Like, I just loved it so much. I breezed through this. I did not realize that I read a 512 page thick book. It felt more like, maybe not 300, maybe like 350 or something. It felt a lot faster than, yeah, it is 512 or something like that. At least 500. It felt like it just went a lot faster than it did. I was just having such a good time with this book. This was flowy and beautiful and atmospheric. We have a plot, we have a strong female character. It has a lot of things that I really, really love. But in this book, we follow Xingyin, who is the daughter of Chang'e, who is the moon goddess. I know. She's the daughter of the moon goddess. Why did you say it like that? Okay, anyway. Chang'e is, oh yeah, I should probably say this is adult, but could also read as young adult. There's a nice crossover there. It's fantasy, but it is also inspired by mythology, Chinese mythology, so it's a bit of a retelling. We'll get to that in a second, because I just interrupted myself. There's magic in it, there's romance, and badassery. Yeah, okay. But like, subtle badassery. But anyway, Chang'e, the moon goddess, has been exiled to the moon after her husband was rewarded with an immortal potion, so a potion he would drink and then turn immortal. However, Chang'e ended up drinking it, so she went against the celestial emperor's wishes and therefore was exiled to the moon. When she was exiled, she was pregnant with Xingyin, so they don't know that she exists. Something happens though, because Xingyin has magic that she's been repressing throughout the years while they've been living on the moon, and it flares up. And because of this, they have sudden visitors that they don't want, and Xingyin finds herself in a situation she has to basically leave the moon. So she does, and actually ends up in the celestial kingdom where these people live. The celestial emperor and the empress. At this place, she both befriends various people. Among those are the crown prince, and she also starts to train with them. She learns a lot of things about history. She learns a lot of things about magic. She also starts to train archery and like sword fighting and stuff, so she becomes badass, but she has one goal, just one goal, and that is she wants to free her mother. So to do this, she ends up going on various quests. And I feel like that's all I want to say. There's just, this book actually has a lot. I think it was split up into different acts as well, if I recall correctly, which is very fitting. We have a few time jumps as well, which kind of took me off guard. At some point, I'm not gonna lie, like I was a bit like, oh, okay, we're doing that, okay. But it was fine. They're immortals, so like they don't really age the same way we do. It's more like jump ahead in time because, you know, stuff that I'm not gonna get into because spoilers, but I was just suddenly surprised by a time jump a couple of times. It just surprised me the first time. But it was just so nice and like breezy and light, and we still have this like, she's not badass in the same way that maybe Selena Sadothian is, because Selena is a little bit loudmouthy as well. She's more like, I can do this, and then does it. Like, she trains to do this thing. I respect it so much. That sound is so vague, but like I don't feel like I can say, I don't feel like I want to say any more than that, because I want you guys to experience this for yourselves. This was beautiful vibes. I enjoyed this so much, and I'm so excited to be getting my hands on the sequel as well. I feel very lucky to have the Fairy Loot edition, especially after reading the book and just loving it so much. If you want to feel the vibes, by the way, this sums it up pretty much very well. Like, this is the vibes in this book. But also this is also the vibes in this book. It was so beautiful, and I really felt like the world was built up beautifully as well. Like, I had like a clear image in my head of how everything looked. It was kind of whimsical at times as well, I want to say. It was a bit fairy tale-like as well at times, I want to say, but it's not a fairy tale. It's just like fairy tale-like at times. And for a debut, I thought it was beautifully written, but it is a debut, so keep that in mind. We do support debuts here on the channel though, I just want to say. So, Daughter of the Moon Goddess really positively surprised me, even though I went into it with a very positive mindset as it was. It just surprised me anyway. I was just having such a good time with it, like breezing through it. I lost sleep over this book, so that's when you know it's done some kind of impression on you, when you lose sleep over a book. Yeah, but that's it. This video has turned out way too long anyway, so I just really love talking about my favorite books. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this from me, but also bookish unboxings, 24-hour readathons, weekly vlogs, monthly TBR videos, wrap-ups, and all the other booktube stuff, definitely consider hitting the subscribe button. If you want to check out my Patreon as well, there's a link to it in the pinned comment. And I think that's all I got for you guys today. So I hope you enjoyed it, even though it was a little bit ranty. I hope you enjoyed it regardless, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye. Oh, you know you're beautiful.